Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Women in Math and STEM, where our mission is to reach out to as many professionals, aspiring professionals, students, whatever you name it. We try to reach out to them, who essentially support the initiative of bringing more women and young girls into the STEM field. So, with that being said, as always, feel free to open up the description or transcript to better follow along, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hello, and thank you so much for coming to this call and talking with me today. Just to sort of start off, do you mind introducing yourself as sort of walking us through your journey to get you where you are today?
Yes, thank you for having me, Angelina. I really appreciate it. I'm Hortensia Soto. I am a professor of mathematics at Colorado State University, and I am currently the president of the Mathematical Association of America. And my journey through mathematics, I mean, it's a long story. It's very circular, it's not linear at all, but I'll try to kind of give you the highlights. I had a great high school math teacher. I went to college thinking I was going to be a lawyer. I was still taking calculus. I realized I really liked math, pursued math, um, ended up getting a PhD in mathematics education as my specialty. And so I do work on the teaching and learning of mathematics, specifically at the undergraduate level. But the way that I describe my work is that I work with kindergarten through collegiate teachers. So I do professional development for them. I train them in terms of courses and so forth. And let's see, my career. So I kind of have an interesting career, I think, because it's a little different in the sense that this is my third institution, and that's kind of unheard of in academia. And so I had my first job. It was primarily a teaching institution, and I did have to do some research, and I was terrified of that. And then I published my first paper, and I was super excited about it. And I realized, oh, I kind of like this research part of my job. And I was there for about 10 years, and then I sought a position elsewhere where I could spend a little bit more time doing research. And so I was at a second institution and I got to do more research there. And I still had a fairly heavy teaching load. And after 15 years, I came here to Colorado State, and I've been here since the fall of 2020. And it's, at every institution has been different, and at each institution, I have grown in different ways.
I see. I think you mentioned like in your career you've done research, you've also sort of done professional development, and you're currently a math professor as well as the president of the Mathematical Association for America. I was just wondering, how do you balance so many responsibilities?
It's I don't know that I do, let me say that. I kind of let go of some things at particular times. And right now, the MAA, for example, buys out some of my time here at CSU. So I have a lighter teaching load because of that. Um, I live by calendars. I make sure to document what I got to do when I got to do it. I'm big on deadlines and really meeting my deadlines. And I don't know that I'm really good at balancing things. I think I've learned to be efficient, and I've learned to say no to things that really don't serve me anymore. Maybe is the best way to say that, or where I don't really feel like I'm making an impact. So I'm much more choosy these days in terms of the things that I say yes to. Um, and I've also really learned about self care and taking care of myself and doing things that I need to do because I've found that when I take care of myself, then somehow things just get done. And part of it is because my mind is clearer, I'm rested, and so I can be more efficient.
Sounds good. I was also just wondering, based on your experience in mathematics and mathematics education, what are some of the challenges like facing the mathematics field or the mathematics education field like currently?
I think that's a really good question. I would say the thing that is hurting our field the most is the fact that we don't have that many math majors anymore. And there is a decline in the number of majors. And as such, several departments are actually shutting down their math programs, their math departments, because there are not enough majors. And I think that that is problematic. And I also recognize the rationale behind this reasoning. And I think that we need to do better job of recruiting and really showcasing the value that mathematics plays in our society so that we can have more math majors.
Sounds good. Sort of on that note, I was wondering what you sort of do when it comes to like attracting students, recruiting students, or like making sure they stay interested in what they're interested if like it's math.
Yeah, I think that there's several things that are really important to keep in mind. And for me, always the most important thing in my classroom, in terms of all the work that I do, is really building a community and ensuring that whoever it is that I'm working with recognizes that we value them, that we have their back, that, and not just we, but that the other students can take care of them also, that they're nurtured, that they have a voice. I think that's really important. Another thing that I think is important is that we teach mathematics in a way where the students can actually see the value that it plays in society. Because one of the beautiful things I think about um, our current student body is how concerned that they are about the world and their environment. And so they really are concerned with social issues. And so I think that we need to do a better job of highlighting and engaging, not just highlighting, but engaging our students in work where they can see the impact that mathematics plays in our society.
Sounds good. I was also just curious about since it seems like you've had like a lot of experience and a long in terms of like depth as well as like time. I was just wondering sort of from your experience how the pandemic or like AI or like issues like that or just something like technological trends or like social trends, how that has sort of affected your classroom or your work.
Oh, yes, of course it has. I mean, let me just start with COVID. COVID was a huge shift, and I was lucky that I only had to teach virtually during one semester, and it just happened, and that was the spring of 2020, and that just happened to be because in the fall I was teaching one course, and it was a small course, and so CSU was able to set it up so that we were in large rooms so that we could still social distance. And we did that for smaller classes, and so my class just happened to be one of those. But I think that the thing that I see is, I think like almost a fear in our students in terms of contact, and I see less social skills because of that isolation. And mathematics is really a social field, and it's important that our students work together, that they communicate with one another, that they recognize that mathematics is not something that we do by ourselves, but it's something that we are much more successful at if we have someone to collaborate with. And so that's one way that I would say that it has impacted my students, which of course means that I need to do a lot of work up front so that I can bring them in as part of that community building where they share with one another and so forth and become social creatures again. In terms of I would say that we have a lot of opportunity right now with AI. Let me just kind of back up a little bit first before I talk about the opportunity, because I think that there's a lot of fear around AI for good reasons. Because, like every technology, if we don't use it correctly, it can become a crutch rather than a tool. And then it leads to dialogues about arguments about whether we should use it or not. not conversations about how could we use it. So I just think about when calculators were first a thing. It was like, oh no, they've got to learn how to do long division. They have to memorize all these things. But we had calculators that would do these things for us so that we get to change the landscape of what we're teaching and how we're teaching it because we have calculators as a tool. And this is true of other softwares like Mathematica, MATLAB and Maple that were very popular for a while. And then other visual softwares such as Geometry Sketchpad and GeoGebra. All of these really were tools that we could use to help our students to think deeper about the mathematics instead of just thinking about the procedural aspects of it. And so I think that AI, if used correctly, and I don't know what correctly is, but I think that there's opportunities there with AI to use it as a learning and as a teaching tool. And I think that there's a lot of room for us to research that. And it's a huge open area right now about how to use AI, not if to use AI, because it's there. So our students are going to use it, but it's like, how do we leverage it as a teaching and learning tool?
Wow, honestly, that's a really interesting perspective. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's easy to say, oh my gosh, they're going to cheat. They're not going to do anything. They're not going to know anything. Instead of saying, oh, what might they learn differently now? And so I think that I think we're obligated. I think we're obligated to stop and think about how to do things differently now because we have a new tool. And to ignore this tool, I think, is going to be detrimental and it could be helpful. And so I would say let's not spend time arguing and having conversations about if we should use it. Rather, let's sit down and have conversations about how we can use it to best help our students.
Sounds good. I was also just wondering, what are your some of your favorite classes to teach, or like some of your most favorite moments with your students?
Oh my gosh. Anything that I can somehow turn into a visualization aspect is what I love to do. And so I would say because of my knowledge that I understand mathematics in a deeper way, that I can turn almost anything into a geometry setting. And so that's what I like to do. I like to bridge the algebra and the geometry and help students to really not see them as algebraic and geometric, but that when they see something symbolic in an algebraic world, that all these pictures start to emerge also at the same time. And similarly, that when they see a picture, that the symbolism filters in also. And so that's what I like to do. And I love it when that happens. I love it when my students have aha moments, when they see the surprising aspects of mathematics and where they link ideas, not even just within the course, but like they bring them in from other courses. I love seeing that. I love being a witness to that.
Sounds good. And just to sort of end off, I was curious if you had any pieces of advice, recommendations, suggestions, honestly anything for students who are interested in a career in math in the future.
I do. I have a lot of advice. I am like the queen of advice. I call it unsolicited advice. I think there's three things that I would say. One, learn to tinker. Two, learn to be curious. And three, learn to collaborate. And not in any order, because they all really, I think, are important to weave together. But the tinkering part, I think about it as be playful. Instead of seeing like a mathematical task as like, oh my gosh, this is dreadful, just start playing with it, kind of start unraveling it. It's kind of like when you have a knot and you're like, how am I going to get this knot out? And you kind of slowly take it out and so forth. Um, so learn to play, because when we change that struggle to play, then lots of wonderful things are happening because our brain is receptive to what might be in front of us. The other thing is be curious. Ask questions like, I wonder what would happen if I did this. I wonder what happens if I look at a smaller case. I wonder what would happen if I plug in numbers. I wonder what would happen if I talked to so and so about this. I wonder what would happen if I asked AI about it. And I wonder why AI would give me that answer. And then collaborate. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And don't be afraid to say, I don't know. And don't be afraid to say, I'm stuck. Because that is the normal process of learning. Because if we're not stuck, there is no opportunity for learning. It's when we are stuck that there is opportunity to progress and to move forward, and especially if we're willing to tinker and be curious. So just ask for help and learn to work with one another. That's so important, because in the real world, that's what we have to do, is collaborate with others.
Thank you so much for all the good advice, as well as coming here to talk with me and sharing your experience. It was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.